Hello and welcome to my show Indus Cuisine, and I'm your chef Basim Akhund. We're back with a new episode from the heart of Pakistan. Today's recipe is very interesting, and it's a recipe which is basically originating from back in the days when the Mughal emperors were ruling. We're making pulao. As you know that we've made different versions of pulao, but the pulao today which we're making is a modern version of pulao which is enjoyed throughout Pakistan. Why? Because back in the day when the Mughals used to make it, they used to use mutton or lamb or sheep meat. But now, as you can see, that we've come towards a globalized economy and people do not have that much of time to cook very lengthy recipes, so people have shifted towards the chicken one. Usually pulao just has some onions, some cumin seeds, and that is about it, with some fried onions on the top. But we're making the different version which is usually enjoyed in Pakistan today, which will give the pulao a nice red color, and the flavor will be a little spicy also. So what are the ingredients for today's recipe? I have around 1 kilogram of chicken over here, but remember one thing, for this recipe you must be using chicken legs and chicken thighs. Why? Because it has a more flavorful content, and also because it has more fat, so it is more soft in terms of the white meat. Then we need some coriander, which should be fresh. Remember that you will not be using dry coriander leaves. For Pakistani cooking, you do always need green coriander and mint leaves to be fresh always. Remember that. Apart from that, you will be needing some rice. We're using around 3 cups of basmati rice. Everyone knows that basmati rice has originated from Pakistan. It's one of the biggest exports of our country also, and basmati rice is a form of rice in which the grain is complete and it is not broken from the center. So we'll be using 3 cups, but as you can see, it's more than 3 cups. Why? Because you always have to soak the rice for at least half an hour, 30 minutes before you use it. Remember that. You have to wash the rice at least 4 to 5 times before you use it. Why? Because you want to take the dust particles out of the rice when it is basically packed. Then you need around 2 onions, 3 tomatoes, some green chilies, some peanuts. Now coming towards the peanuts part, if you are allergic to peanuts, you can remember one thing, that you can take the peanuts out. That's all right. Apart from that, you need some ginger, some garlic, which should be fresh. Remember that. Some coriander powder. You will be needing some red chili powder. You need some star anise, a cup of oil, and salt to taste. That's about it. These are all the ingredients for today's recipe. Now what we shall do is we shall start cooking for today's recipe. First, what I'll do is I shall bring a wok and keep it over here. We'll be cooking this recipe in a wok. Remember one more thing, that whenever you talk about a rice dish or a pulao, the pulao is always cooked with the water of the chicken. Remember that. Why? Because that is where the flavor comes from. So what I'll do first is I'll bring the pan to heat, and we have to brown the onions. So I'll pick up 2 onions. The onions need to be towards the large size for this recipe. You take the root out first of all. Why? Because the root holds the onion together, and if the onion is being held together, what will happen is it won't fall apart properly and the texture will not be maintained nicely. So just pick up the roots and just throw it in the dustbin. Why? Because you want to keep your station clean always. Remember, if your station is clean, then only you'll go a very long way. What I'll do is I shall just cut it from the center and slice it finely. The finer you slice it, the better texture you will get of the onion. Remember that. Why? Because the recipe will feel a bit more smoother. If the onion is not finely chopped or finely sliced for this recipe, what will happen is that the texture will change in a way that the onion will come in your mouth, and that is one thing you do not want. Remember that. Slowly and gradually will take you a long way. Always turn it around and keep slicing, and remember, each and every slice needs to be equal. Now cut it from the center and continue as I was doing it over here. Slowly and gradually will take you a long way. Remember this. And if you would like, you can also use fried onions which come in a packet, if you do not want to use the onion which is basically fresh and you have to basically fry it, because it will take a little bit of time. So what I'll do now is I shall just take half a cup of oil for now and keep the remaining on the side. The pan is super hot, so I shall just pick up the onion and transfer it over here. Remember that. And let it cook properly. Fry it till the onions are brown. You need to remember this. Why? Because the flavor will come from here only. What I'll do is I shall just keep frying this, and on the other side what I'll do is I shall get ready with the chicken. Now I'm basically making this recipe in 2 different pans. Why? Because I will save time this way, and you will also get a chance to cook this in a very proper way. So now what do we need? First we need some salt. Why? Because once you add the salt, the onions start sweating, and when the onions will start sweating, then only you'll get a nice color on the top. So now mix it up. And just push it in the center and give this a lid. Let it cook for around, let's say, 5 minutes. So till then this is cooking, what I'll do is I shall just clean up, and then I shall continue and tell you what's the next step coming forward. So now the next step for this recipe is to make the broth. Now how will you make a broth? You have to remember one thing, that the chicken needs to be cooked with the rice, but before that what you can do is, to save time, you can first change the board. Why? Because avoid cross-contamination, remember that, and bring the red board forward. The red board comes forward, we keep it over here, and we bring the chicken now. So now if you add the chicken directly, what will happen is that the chicken will basically take a lot of time to cook. What I'll do now is I shall just keep the chicken over here. The chicken must be thoroughly washed, also remember that, and I shall pick up a paring knife. So we're using thighs and legs. So the thigh has a bone in the center. What I'll do is I shall just cut it like this a little bit, make a small cut, so that the chicken cooks till the center. Make a cut on the leg piece also just like this, and slowly and gradually keep going. Now you have to make a cut. Why? Because you want the chicken to cook till the core. You don't want it to be raw. Now remember, there's always this redness people complain about around the bone area. Why? Because the heat doesn't reach over there, and if you want to cook it a little quicker, for that you have to cut it a little bit. If you do not cut it, what will happen is that the chicken will have this redness around the bone, and which will give you not a very pleasant flavor or taste, you could say. Now this is done. What I'll do is I'll keep this on the side, and I shall just bring another wok in front. For this, what we have to do is we have to bring the wok to boil first. We'll just increase the heat to full. We'll add around a liter of water for now. Always keep your eye on the onion. Why? Because you don't want to burn it. And then we shall add 2 pieces of star anise. Why? Because it gives a very nice flavor. Then we shall add around a half teaspoon of salt. And now what we'll do is we'll add all the chicken over here. Now once this comes to boil, let it boil for at least 10 minutes on low heat. It's also known as simmering the meat. Why? Because you want the texture to be perfect. Now till the time this is cooking, what we'll do is we'll just go for a short break, and once we're back from the break, I'll let you know what to do. Don't go anywhere, there's a lot to be done right now. Keep watching Indus Cuisine. Welcome back. You're watching Indus Cuisine, and I'm your chef Basim Akhund. During the break, we just did nothing. We just waited for you, and the only thing I did was I switched everything. So I've put the chicken over here. Why? Because the chicken needs to boil. Once it comes to boil, then you will let it simmer. Remember that. Do not reduce the heat right now. On the other hand, you can see that the onions are nicely brown. What I'll do is I shall just increase the heat and keep an eye on them. Why? Because you do not want to overcook them for now. So just slowly and gradually brown them up, and then you have to do something else. As I told you, we've just added half a cup of oil, and there was a reason behind it. Why? Because we need the oil again. So what I'll do now is I shall pick up 3 tomatoes which are over here, and I shall keep them over here. So now place the tomatoes over here. You don't need this anymore. You keep it at the back slowly, and then just take the eye of the tomato out and place the tomatoes over here. So what do you have to do now? You have to basically cook the tomatoes, but in a very different way. Traditionally they were sliced and added to the food, but over here, if we have a food processor, we will increase the flavor and make it more luxurious. And how will we do that? We will use a blender for this, but how shall that be done? The onions are ready over here. What I'll do is I shall just take them out in a plate momentarily. I shall bring a plate over here, and I shall place it on the chopping board. So now just slowly and gradually take the onions out, and always press the oil out. You don't want all the oil going in the plate. You just want the onions to come out nicely and fairly. That's about it. Over here you have to keep an eye also. Why? Because the chicken When it comes to boil, it will start foaming up. You don't want the foam to come out. The other reason also is that you want to take that top foam out, because that is all the impurity that comes from the chicken itself. So slowly and gradually take all the onions out, place them on the side, and this is done. Now I'll keep this over here, let it rest, reduce the heat to completely zero, and try taking out the smallest piece possible. When it's almost done, take this on the side. Now what do you need? You need another empty plate, which is over here, and just start skimming the foam. Why? Because the foam is all the impurity. You do not want that going in your food. Remember that. So now reduce the heat, put it to simmer, and just take this out. Why? Because it will add a very pungent flavor to the stock we're basically trying to extract over here. So we've taken this out. You will not use this. This will be thrown away on the side over here. And now we shall continue. The onions are over here. I'll keep them on the side momentarily. Now what I'll do is I shall just keep an eye over here. The heat has gone down too low. So now what I'll do is I shall put it to simmer. Reduce the heat. Why? Because you want all this water. This water should not be wasted at all. So reduce the heat. Let it boil for another, let's say, 5 minutes, and cut the tomatoes into quarters. Always remember, if you have a proper sharp knife, then only you can go a long way. Otherwise, you'll have a very big problem in processing or cutting the tomatoes. Now what I'll do is I'll bring the jug over here, transfer all the tomatoes first, and then pick up all the onion, and this goes over here. So I'll just pick up the spatula, slide them in, and this is done. Keep this on the side. You don't need it anymore, and put a lid on top and process it until it's super fine and converts into a nice fine paste. This goes here. Process it. So as you can see, the tomatoes are done. What I'll do is I'll place them over here and increase the heat to full again. The remaining oil basically goes back in. Why? Because you need the flavor. And you bring the oil back to heat. So let this be on the side, let it rest for a bit. And now what do we need? We need some garlic, let's say around 5 cloves, and we need some ginger, let's say around a tablespoon of worth. So this is done. What we shall do is now we shall keep this on the side, pick this up again, and transfer all the garlic and ginger into this. So as I told you, we're doing it with a modern take. Keep this in, process it, and convert it into a super fine paste. So the oil has come to heat. What I'll do is I'll slowly and gradually transfer all of this. And remember, you have to fry all these ingredients before you add anything else into it. There's a lot in the jug. Slowly take it out and let it rest over here. Now what shall we do? We do not need this anymore. We'll keep it at the back, but we shall take the peanuts. Now as you can see, there's oil on the side. We'll take the peanuts and place it in the oil. Why? Because I want to deep fry the peanuts properly before we add anything else. Over here you can see that the chicken has come to boil properly, which means that the food is basically coming to life. The texture is basically coming back. Now what do we need? We need a few things. We need the heat to go up first, and we need to slowly and gradually let the oil on the side come in the center. Why? Because that is the only way that the center part of the tomato paste will get a chance to fry equally. As you can see, the chicken over here is not cooking towards its 100% potential. We are just cooking the chicken up to 60%. That is about it. Slowly and gradually start folding it. Bring the oil in the front and be super careful. As you can see, this is now frying properly. What I'll do is I shall add half a teaspoon of salt. Spread it out. Why? Because you need the tomato to cook properly. Mix it in. Fold it properly. And till the time all this doesn't cook, you cannot add anything else. But with this you can put some coriander powder and some red chili powder. That's about it. This goes in, we keep this on the side. Whatever you don't need goes on the side. Why? Because you will not create a big mess or clutter where you're cooking. That's rule number 1. Start mixing this. I didn't add all the spices in the oil. Why? Because I didn't want to burn it. I will slowly and gradually start mixing it. And just scrape it from the sides. This is done. Now the paste is ready, it's properly fried. The masala, basically this is what we call, is ready to go. Now reduce the heat to 0, over here. And now what we shall do, now transfer all of this into this, just like I just stopped talking. Why? Because I had to concentrate, remember that. Now it has come to boil, as you can see. Now start increasing the heat and mix it around. It will have a very beautiful flavor. It will taste delicious. And this is where the real flavor for this recipe will come from. You can see if the paste wasn't fine, the texture would not be super translucent, not translucent, but you could say smooth. Why? Because if there is some smoothness in the food, then only you'll go a long way. Now as you can see, I had soaked the rice. I shall just transfer all of it over here, but not just like that. So what I'll do is I shall just pick some up and start spreading it around. Why? Because you do not want to create a rice pad in between, which will just come up to a hill. So spread it out. And the water that's inside will also go. Why? Because that's the starch and we need that flavor. Now slowly and gradually start spreading it around. And now this goes on the side. Remember, do not create a mess. Always try maximizing the amount of things you can save. Why? Because wastage is not good. A lot of people in the world sleep hungry even today. Okay, now just let it settle. Increase the heat, and once it comes to boil, let it cook for 15 minutes. Now you need to add a little bit of salt for the rice. Spread it out. So I'm adding half a teaspoon more. And this is done. Keep this on the side again, and we shall take a few pieces of star anise more. Take around 5 pieces of green chili. Just slit it from the center so that the heat goes through and they are cooked nicely. Now what I'll do is I shall just take the stem out and let these beauties float on the top. So till then this is cooking, we'll just clean up and then I'll show you the final look of the recipe. Don't go anywhere. Keep watching Indus Cuisine. So as you can see, today's recipe is ready. I cooked for 5 to 6 people. Whenever you make a pulao, which is over here, you can see it's for so many people. It's not just to feed one person. We cook as a family in Pakistan. We always cook for more than the people who are living in the house. Why? Because you never know when guests come, and when guests come, guests are like family to us also, no matter who they are. I have just given out a single serving. It's very easy. It's a very easy recipe and it is delicious, but you have to remember one thing, that the broth must be used, which was basically used for boiling the chicken. Why? Because if you use the normal water, the whole food will go bad. Why? Because that's the main flavor and that is the essence of this recipe. It's a very simple recipe. I've just added some coriander on the side and some green chili. Why? Because people like to have it like that in Pakistan. And at times I do not add the coriander on top. Why? Because some people do not fancy it. I hope you liked today's episode, and remember one more thing, if you want any other recipe, you can always go to our Indus News YouTube page and go there and comment underneath my shows. I'll see you in the episode of Indus Cuisine. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.